I am so excited to introduce our special guest to you today. Her name is Dr. Kimberly Hankins. And Kimberly, for those of us that don't know you, welcome and give us a little bit of background information about you.
Thank you so much for having me, Chelsea. I'm so excited to be here. So I'm a violist and a violinist, and I kind of made my way into the musician's wellness world and became really interested in it through my own experience. And what happened was when I was an undergrad, I was, I think, a junior in undergrad, and I started having all of these competitions and preparing for a recital, preparing for grad school recital or grad school auditions. And I was just practicing a lot. And I think that a lot of violists can relate to this, but I switched from violin my senior year of high school. And I always felt like I was really behind. Like I had to do a lot of catching up. I had to do a lot of extra work in order to be just as good as my colleagues. Um, and to feel like I would be capable of getting into graduate school. So I really applied myself and I was practicing all of these hours, but I didn't have a great sense of body awareness and I didn't really have the best approach to playing. And what happened was I got tendonitis in my left shoulder. And I was playing, I remember being in the practice room and I was so disconnected from my body that I didn't realize that I was in pain. I just realized that I couldn't hold my viola up anymore. That was a
Mm,
huge wake up call like, oh my gosh, I need to do something about this. So I
right.
saw a medical professional. They told me, maybe try not playing viola for 3 months. And I was like, yeah, not gonna happen. And I ended up maybe really irresponsibly going online and just Google searching like holistic remedies for tendonitis. And what I found was a hot yoga studio really close by. And so I started going to yoga. I found that I felt so much better because I wasn't moving my body, right? I was just practicing my instrument for hours and hours. And so moving my body in a different way, being a part of a community that all seemed very supportive and uplifting of each other was really helpful part of my healing process. And I was able to actually get back to playing. I successfully auditioned for grad schools. I went on with the rest of my life. But this idea that movement can be something so healing to us really stuck with me. And so when I was in grad school, I had the opportunity to take postural alignment for musicians class, which I loved. And then I did a Pilates certification, which I also loved, and it had a huge emphasis um, on postural alignment as well, and corrective exercise to get us back into a place of um, a healthy postural alignment on a very basic level. But um, I found that that was really, really inspiring to me. And there was one point in my life where I wanted to do my dissertation on like corrective exercises for musicians, and life kind of brought me in another direction. But I've always been really interested um, in this idea of movement being healing. And so after that, I got my yoga certifications and I started teaching yoga. Eventually started teaching yoga for musicians, and yeah, and it's just kind of all been this process of one thing after another of like, how do I offer more to help musicians with what they're going through?
Mhm.
And now I'm at the point where it's like I really am diving into my own musicianship a little bit more, um, and so it's challenging for myself to find balance in my life because I am passionate about so many different things.
Right. No, that's so wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. And I wanted to have you talk a little bit more in depth about you were talking about body awareness and when you were struggling with tendonitis and not having a good body awareness, and then what kind of changes did you make, and what kind of changes do you feel like are really, really helpful for body awareness to not have pain, to not have anxiety, things that might come from something like that?
Mm, I think that, I mean, I think that for singers it's a little bit different, and I'm going to speak as an instrumentalist, but I feel that in my own experience as a musician, I think many instrumentalists can relate to this too. But when I'm really focused on the music that's in front of me, I find myself leaning forward, trying to get my eyes closer to the page, really just, completely absorbed in whatever it is that I'm looking at, because I want to understand what's on the page. I want to be able to play this music correctly. I don't want to misread notes or play a wrong note. So I'm really, really looking and focused at what's in front of me. And when all of my attention is then externally removed from my body and is on something outside of myself, I'm no longer in my body and aware of what my body is doing. And so things that have really helped me, I mean, I think that it's been a long journey of realizing that I wasn't even aware of what my body was doing. I think that, um, it's you can visually see me playing an instrument. I can visually see myself playing an instrument. And so therefore it's like, oh, I'm aware of what I'm doing. But when you're really asking yourself, how do I feel when I'm playing this instrument? Or um, am I noticing the vibrations of my instrument on the surface of my body? I think that that's a much more challenging thing for us to access, especially when we're trying to focus on something that is external. And so uh, I've had teachers that have suggested multiple different things. Luckily, I had some great teachers that suggested that I try Pilates, that I try martial arts, that I try to explore these embodied practices. And for me, what always felt really good for my body is yoga. And I really gravitate towards yoga because I really love the spiritual aspects of the practice. And I love meditation. And I just feel like when I do yoga, I feel better. And and so that's what I gravitate towards. But I actually don't believe that yoga is necessarily the best thing for everyone. That I think it's important as musicians to find an embodiment practice that works best for you, that makes you feel excited to show up for it. Because if you're not excited to do your exercises or do your meditation or whatever it is that you want to do so that you can prevent injury or just feel better when you're performing, then it's not something you're going to stick with. So I think that that's something really important, is finding something that makes you happy, but also that practice being something that has a somatic aspect or an embodied aspect. And what I mean by that is something that really gets you thinking about, how does it feel to be in my body right now? And I think that that question is something we're not often asked when we're performing in orchestra or performing even in our lessons. We're not often concerned about what it feels like. We're more concerned about what it sounds like.
Mhm.
And so if we can approach our musicianship from this place of, yes, I want to sound good. Yes, I want all the notes to be in tune, and for me to really exemplify what this composer is trying to say through music. But also, can I do that in a way where I'm not sacrificing my own integrity as a human, where I'm not sacrificing my sense of ease or comfortability or inner peace for something external? Because I think there is a way that we can practice and prepare music in a way where we're also honoring ourselves in the process.
I love that. And so if someone feels like they are completely out of alignment, they're just like, "Oh my gosh, I am a mess. There's a mess upstairs. There's a mess going on," but they're not quite sure how to start, or that maybe the first practical steps to follow to start to get themselves more in alignment, what would you say?
I think that ultimately, first of all, I love that you use the word alignment. And it's like I started calling myself the aligned musician on Instagram a couple years ago. And it was at a time when I was really focused more on the physical aspects of yoga and of other practices, and of how there is this sense of postural alignment, and how having good postural alignment can help us feel better, right? But also there's this other aspect to the word alignment, which I think came to the forefront a little bit later for me, which is this idea that our innermost self is being heard, and that you're able to voice your truth, whatever that is, that your words and your actions are in alignment with who you really are and what you want in the world. And I think that it can be hard to feel in alignment when we're music students, because the way that we're being asked to interpret music may not be in the way that we feel deep down it should be. Or that we can't perform in a way that expresses our actual emotions that we're feeling in a given time. And I'm not saying that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but I think that in general, many of the musicians I meet, and myself included in this, have had a hard time speaking our truth. And I feel that something that's really important for us is to reconnect to that and learn how to do that. And so, along with your question of like, how do we tap into that? How do we start to know what our inner truth is, and to honor that, and then to feel confident speaking that? Those are all challenging things. And I think the first step is, I know this is like so, I don't know, typical and practical, and probably you've heard it a million times, but it's start a meditation practice. And when I first started meditating, I absolutely hated it. I absolutely hated it. And I struggle with some intrusive thoughts. And so sitting with my thoughts that were oftentimes overwhelming, very negative, that felt like an attack on myself, was really, really hard. It was really hard to sit with myself. And I actually like didn't start out by meditating, because every time I was like, oh, I'm going to download this app and like sit here for 5 minutes and try to be guided through this meditation, I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit there with my eyes closed and listen to myself. It was a very stressful experience. And what really helped me, and what actually got me into meditation, like I said before, was yoga. But it's because I think that the ancient yogis were really onto something. Because when you move your body, or when you are in certain asanas or yoga poses, it can be a lot easier to quiet your mind than if you're just, I don't know, sitting in a chair, or like, or even when we're playing our instruments, asking yourself what you feel, it can be really challenging. And so I would say, if you're someone like me that can't just download an app and start a meditation practice, start with movement. And if it's not yoga, if it's something else, if it's going on a walk, or going on a run, or lifting weights, whatever it is that allows you to really tap in and hear what your thoughts are without judgment, I think that that's a huge step forward, and really this idea of learning how to listen to ourselves.
Yeah, that's so helpful. And I want to dig into a little bit. You mentioned inner truth and speaking our truth. And can you talk a little bit more in depth, if this is a new concept for someone, like what does that mean, and what exactly does that all entail? And then maybe how did you find your inner truth? Was it like a defining moment, or was it kind of like a gradual shift? And so if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that depending on who you ask, people will say slightly different things. But I think inner truth is about really listening to yourself and what is true for you in any given situation. And that's something that kind of takes time. And what I mean by that is in conversations with other people, like in our conversation right now, we can listen to our bodies and ask ourselves, am I feeling nervous right now? Am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling what are the physical sensations that are going on in my body right now? And just accepting and acknowledging that in any given moment so that you can decide how you want to move forward versus acting from a sense of urgency or maybe a sense of um, like social requirements um, or I'm behaving or acting in a certain way in order to feel more comfortable. But most of us in our daily lives, we're not tapped into our physical sensations or our inner mental landscape. We're just trying to do our 9 to 5, get paid, eat food, survive, do the basic necessities of what it takes to be a human. And oftentimes we can find ourselves in situations where we react or we say something that we may not mean. And later on, we think back on it and it's like, why did I do that? Why did I say that thing? Or why did I blow up at that person? And I believe it's because we're not in that moment actually listening to ourselves on a deeper level to get beyond the reaction that may happen without our conscious being involved, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and so I found myself when I was in music school, I found myself wondering why um it felt like there were so many rules, right? Like you have to be at orchestra at this time, you have to be at all these rehearsals, you have to do all these things, here are all the things you have to do, and it's a lot. Especially, I mean, I'm a performance major, or I was a performance major, but for education majors, I always was just blown away by how much education majors had to do, because it always seemed like so much more than what I was doing. And I felt like I was already maxed out on my time and my energy. But we don't get to take days off, really. We don't get to have breaks uh or whatnot. We're expected to practice maybe 4 or 6 hours a day on top of our full course load. And so I know for me, it always felt like my energy was being drained. Like I was always being asked to do more, and that the better student you were, the more that you could sacrifice yourself to show up, then the more that you were going to succeed after you graduated. And I think that that is a message that a lot of people are told as students, whether it's something explicit or implicit. Um, but at least for me, that's what I felt, was that like I was always being asked to do more than what I may have at sometimes felt like I was physically or mentally incapable of doing. And so I have a very, my wellness journey is very long, and there were a lot of like if it was a roller coaster, there were a lot of ups and downs to it. And uh and so for me, finding my voice kind of came to a head when I had a lesson with one of my great viola teachers who I loved. And he he asked me, he's like, he's like, this is gonna sound really out there, but I think you have like a throat chakra problem. And I was like, what are you talking about? What are chakras? Like, what does that mean? And he's like, it just seems like you're really closed off, like in your shoulders. It seems like your shoulders are rounded forward, that also at the same time that you're afraid that whatever you're going to say through your instrument is going to be wrong. And that really hit me. And I remember I went home and I did my research on chakras because I was like, okay, what is this? Um, and I really sat with that idea and I really took that in because at that point in my life, I was in a graduate degree and I felt like I was never allowed to truly express myself. And I think that that is something that uh, goes back all the way to my childhood. But I think in the music world, it wasn't exactly cultivated either. That a lot of times in lessons, I was told what was wrong, and that was that. Like, these are the things you need to fix, which is great. Awesome. I love that. Like, tell me what's wrong so I can fix it, right?
Right.
But when we're constantly being told that that speaking your voice through your instrument is wrong, it's hard not to start to make that a judgment about ourselves. And then how do we actually get the confidence to make music in the way that we feel deep inside of ourselves, like deep in our soul, if we're constantly being told that, you know, you got to do this, you got to do this technique is wrong. And I'm not here to say that those things aren't needed, because when you're in the classical music world, at least, like, there's such an emphasis on I hate to use this word, but perfection. That you do have to have a certain clarity in your sound, and you have to cultivate certain skills in order to succeed. I think just like every other profession. But it, as a musician, it can be very hard to separate the technique from the self. And so I really started, I think for me, it was when I started my DMA. I moved to a new place. I had a different teacher. I had new friends. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start. Like, it's going to be really scary. I know that it's going to be imperfect. I'm going to feel super anxious. I'm going to feel super awkward. I'm an introvert anyway. So I already don't tend to go out of my way to meet new people and spark up conversations. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to try to be more authentic. And this idea of like what it means to be authentic, and like, I think kind of is really similar to being in alignment, right? This idea of like, I'm not going to sugarcoat things so much. Um, I'm not going to withhold speaking up when I really feel like I should speak up. And I'm just going to try to show up as that person that I want to be, someone that's able to be more confident. And I think it was like, in some ways, it was like a fake it till you make it kind of thing, for me finding my voice. I think a huge part of it was when I became a yoga teacher and when I became a group fitness instructor, and I started like teaching those classes where I literally had to yell over the music to be heard. I found that that was such an empowering experience for me. And I think I don't really talk about this very often, but when I was in grad school, even my first DMA recital, I was always too shy to talk in my own recitals. So I didn't introduce pieces. I didn't I didn't really do anything or say anything. I just showed up, played the gig, went home. And it was like my second DMA recital. So after I'd been teaching yoga for like a year, was the first time that I walked on stage with, like, even before my concert, I was like, you know what? I really want to speak at this. I really want to make an authentic, genuine connection with my audience. And I want to share what I find interesting about this music because I think it needs to be shared. And, that was the first time that I was able to do that. And I really think, I think yoga was a big part of it. And also just this whole idea of listening to my inner self and being like, you know what? Yeah, things are scary, things are hard, but I can do scary, hard things because I'm in music school. I got into music school. I've graduated from degree programs already. Like, there's no reason why I should be feeling this sense of overwhelming fear. And so it really took me time, many years to work through and to get to a place where I feel like I can actually speak my inner truth.
Yes, no, that's so wonderful. And so that was my next question of is if you had any experiences with performance anxiety, and it sounds like that was very much connected into what you were just talking about.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, performance anxiety started coming up when I was an undergrad as well. And it's really interesting because I just mentioned like throat chakra issues, but it's like throat chakra, shoulders, neck. Like, I had shoulder tendonitis around the same time I had performance anxiety. So I just find it really interesting, these kinds of connections between um, the mind and the body. But yeah, I started having a lot of performance anxiety because I think because when I was practicing all of these hours, something that was coming forward for me, aside from these like intrusive thoughts I was having about myself, I would also constantly tell myself, like, I need to do more because I'm not good enough yet. I have to practice more so I can be competitive so that I can get into grad school. And I think that myself telling myself that messaging over and over and over again in the practice room, consciously and also subconsciously, there's a connection there as well with like, well, if you're not good enough now, right? If I'm
Mhm.
not good enough now, then why am I performing? Why am I like, if I'm not good enough now, and that's what I keep telling myself, I'm not good enough now, I'm not good enough now. I've just taught myself to tell myself I'm not good enough when I get on stage, right? Because that inner voice, that inner messaging that we tell ourselves to try to get us amped up and motivated when we're in the practice room is something that can be taught and is something that doesn't just exist in the practice room. It exists anytime we go to play our instruments. And so when I went to go perform, I found myself, shaking a lot, um, sort of like losing my sense of focus. I remember there was a performance I did in undergrad where my mind went completely blank while I was playing a piece from memory by myself.
Mm.
And it was terrifying. I had to stop playing and then I had to try again. And it was just like that experience for me was so awful. It felt like such a judgment about myself, and I wasn't in a place mentally where I could accept failure.
Right.
And so it was scary. And I think my performance anxiety just kind of got worse and worse after that. Every time I went to perform, I was like, "Oh, this is going to happen. My mind's going to go blank." Um, and so it was like every time I went on stage, it felt like it was a worse experience. And eventually I ended up deciding to start taking beta blockers for it and trying to work through it, like with the physical sensations being removed by the beta blockers, maybe I could train my mind to not be so overwhelmed in those situations. But in the practice room, I was still telling myself how how I was not ready, how I was not enough, and how I needed to be better, which I mean, if you're telling yourself I need to be better, it's like that's not really that far away from telling yourself that you're not enough now, that you're not enough. And that's just simply not true.
Right.
And so, yeah, and it's interesting because as I worked through my performance anxiety, I feel like my performance anxiety and my other anxiety issues are very related and also very different at the same time. Because as I was able to heal my performance anxiety, I found that my everyday, just like being Kim Hankins anxiety amped way up. And so that brought about a whole other like mental health journey of like, how do I stop being so anxious all the time? Um, and so it was for me a very long process. And now I'm in a place where I still get nervous. I still feel the physical sensations of my sympathetic nervous system amping up and getting ready for me to perform. But now I understand that um, that those physical sensations are also correlated with excitement, that I'm actually genuinely excited to share what I've been working on because I'm proud of it, because it's like it's been a big part of my life for the last few months, you know, whenever it is that I do the concert. And so I've been able to come into a much more positive mindset about it. And the way I did that was I created like a practice room detox for myself essentially. Like um I decided that I was no longer going to tolerate myself bashing myself mentally. That was simply something I was no longer willing to tolerate. And so anytime I picked up my instrument, if I found myself engaging in any kind of dialogue where I was saying anything negative about myself, I would put my instrument down and I would go for a walk, or I would meditate about it. I'd say, oh, this thought's coming up from me. This thought that I'm not enough is coming up. What is that thought really telling me? Is that actually something that I'm telling myself, or is that something that maybe a teacher or a parent or a colleague told me at one point, and that I've started taking on as something I tell myself now? And I really started diving into that and trying to unravel, like, why is it that every time I pick up my instrument, I tell myself that I'm a horrible human being? Like, that's not a normal response. But I wasn't even aware that I was doing that until I set that boundary and I started developing a meditation practice where I actually started listening to the thoughts that I was having on a subconscious level. And so I started with really, you know, short amounts of practice time, and I built up. And over the course of like, I think it was like 4 months, I went from not practicing at all because I was like, anytime I pick up my viola, I'm being so negative to myself, to a point where I had trained my mind not to even go there when I'm practicing, because that's not what I'm here to do. Um, and so that was I think a big part of my performance anxiety journey, because once I was able to get myself to a place where I could pick up my instrument and set these loving boundaries with myself of like, right now for the next 45 minutes, I'm just going to focus on doing the best I can with this music, and it's not a judgment about myself as a human, and that it's acceptable if even if I don't get anything done today, just the fact that I tried and I showed up is valid. And I just started from there, and it really, yeah, now I'm at a place where I feel great. I'm happy. I'm excited to perform now. So, and I'm no longer taking beta blockers. So it's really exciting.
Hey. No, that's such a wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for coming on here and giving so much value and so much insight. I know that I'm so excited for everyone to hear this. So, for those that want to maybe dig a little deeper, learn a little bit more about what you're doing, where can we find you?
So you can find me at thealignedmusician.com, and I have offered a lot of yoga classes in the past, and I'm kind of transitioning more into offering breathwork facilitation. And I think that breathwork actually is really similar to a lot of this work that I've been describing, because it's an active meditation. And through the breath work, you're also thinking about, you're focusing in on your thoughts and what it is that you're truly feeling deep down. And so I really love breathwork so much. It also has a lot of practical benefits, of course, if you're a singer or wind player, brass player. But I found that breath work has been really, really helpful for releasing anxiety and getting more in touch with my inner self. So you can find me there. I have something right now called Breathe and Arrive, and it's an absolutely free community. And when you join, you get access to recorded yoga and breathwork sessions. And you can also sign up for free or very low cost live group classes, because I believe that these practices should be accessible for everyone. So definitely join me there. You can also find me on Instagram at The Aligned Musician, and please reach out to me, send me a DM. I always answer DMs. And if you have any questions about anything today or just want to say hi, I'd absolutely love to hear from you there.
Great. Thank you so much, Kimberly.
Thank you so much, Chelsea.
Yay. Awesome. Okay. That was great. You are amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm so excited. So is this a podcast that you've had for a while? Or is this a new
Um,
podcast, or like?
I release about one episode a week, and I've had it since I think October. So not, or
Okay.
maybe October, November. So not a very long. It's still pretty new, but yeah. And you have a podcast.
Yep.
Have you had yours for very long?
It's been about, I think it's been a year. It's just over a year now since I've had it. It was like last March. And I started it before, I don't know if it was March or February. Like I started making episodes before COVID happened, and then I was like, oh, I'm gonna just like lean into this. But um I don't know if you relate to this at all, but like I'm a total introvert. Like as I was saying in this episode, I really like I've trained myself to be able to be more outgoing, but I really like find it recharging for myself to be by myself. And so having a podcast is kind of weird, but like what I originally had a blog, and I was putting all this time into my blog, and I found that like a lot of my emotions around like perfectionism were coming up in that blog, because I was like, oh, I have to edit it, like all the grammar has to be correct, like everything has to be perfect. And then like not a lot of people were engaging with it. So I was like, you know what? I need an outlet to be able to share some of this like musician's wellness stuff that I'm learning. And my friends are sick of just like me talking about it. So I need an outlet. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try it as a podcast and see what happens. And I think it's been really helpful for me to learn how to like public speak a little bit, because it's not something I think I'm good at. So,
Oh
uh,
gosh, you did a beautiful job. I mean,
oh,
I
thank
I would
you.
have never guessed that just from that. So I mean, you're doing amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun to like to do this and to meet so many different people. That's the thing that I really um find amazing from having a podcast is like I get to talk with amazing people all the time who are doing
Yeah.
awesome stuff, and it's like, man, yeah, like this is this is why I'm doing it. So
Right. No, I'm super glad that I found you on Instagram. So I think your content is wonderful, and I think that your message and everything that you're doing, your passion for it is just a beautiful thing, and I really admire it, and I wish there was more of it in the world. But I think it's the world is shifting a little bit, and I think it's more in the norm to talk about mindfulness and meditation and alignment and things. So I think it's the world is headed in a good direction.
yeah, I hope so. I mean, it's like it's definitely been shifting over this last year, I feel, for sure. And yeah, thank you so much. I love your Instagram too, and you're doing reels, which I'm like, girl, your reels are great. I
Thanks. They're kind of fun sometimes. So yeah,
I just need to
awesome.
be more creative in that way. To-
Well, honestly, I don't think I'm that creative with them. Usually, I just watch other reels or I go on TikTok and see some of the things that are popular, and then I'll just use that as inspiration and just put my own spin on it. So I don't really take any credit for creativity as anyway. So
That's a good
anyway,
idea.
yeah, yeah, I think it would be great. I'd love to see some reels popping out from you. So well, thank you so much and have a wonderful day. It was so nice to meet you.
You too. It's so nice to meet you too, and I hope that your voice gets better.
Oh, thank you. I mean, luckily there's not like a whole lot of performing going on, so it's not that big of a deal. But yes, it would be nice to have it back. So, all right. Well, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
You too. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
I want you to imagine what it would be like if you had so much focus, so much zen, so much peace, so much calmness, and so much excitement at the same time before a performance. As in, like, you're not getting in your head, you're not freaking out, you're not becoming a basket case, or you're not a hot mess. So if you feel like sometimes that is you, imagine what it would feel like if that wasn't the case, if that wasn't a problem anymore. It would be pretty awesome, right? So what is the first step to that? Working with your mindset. So if this is something that's of interest to you, I recommend going to stopcaringwhattheythink.com. If you're a performer and you want to have more confidence, if you want to get out of your head, these are tips and tricks that I'm offering to you for free. It's a free resource that can help you have more confidence, to manage that anxiety, and just to feel like you can enjoy life again. You can enjoy performing. That's what it's all about, right? So stopcaringwhattheythink.com. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope that you enjoyed it and learned something. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. I post new videos every Wednesday and a new podcast every Friday. Thanks.